Edward and Veronica, take 2, leg stretches. So, Edward, moving into a back bend, right? Like when you're a kid, you can just do it.
Right.
But now as we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 20s, 30s, wherever you are, you need to warm up a little bit. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, warming up is really key because there's a physical component to this, but there's also really just the fear element as well. So we can address the physical part of it first, and I like to begin, even though it's backbending, with hip warm-ups and first, because the whole the body is organic. You have to think of the whole thing. So I always start with some basic hip warm-ups. So we're both sitting in ankle to knee.
Right. And Edward's knees are touching his ankles on both sides. So is Darren, the photographer. You can't see him. Everybody's in on the game. For me, like I have a huge space here.
Yep.
But
be gentle.
Yeah. I mean, but if I sit this way when I'm watching TV or I'm on the phone and I kind of am consistent with it for a month or 2, I can get my knees to touch my ankles on both sides.
Well, and there's no prize for that. Unfortunately, there's no cash prize for getting the knee and the ankle
Wait,
touching.
What?
However, we do want to be warming this whole area, the psoas, the inner thigh, everything up before we do anything as dramatic as a back bend.
And you know what else? Like, even if your hips are tight, this is a good way to just open your hips, right?
And you don't have to do it that long, just a little bit of sitting like this, you know. If you're very tight and you're watching it, maybe just even like this, you could even prop this up a bit. It's really about just letting things gently open.
Does it help your lower back?
I think it does, because I think that a lot of people, just when they have a back thing, start with the lower back, and I think that makes sense. But I think look at your hips too, because the whole area is obviously connected. So hips are often the way into the lower back.
Does it help knees?
This angle could be tricky, and so I don't think of it as something that's a knee helper, but I think it's, you know, be cautious with all these things, with your knees, with everything else. Be adventurous with whatever you're doing, but be gentle and realize just because, you know, my knee goes down, your knee doesn't go down today, you don't want to ever force this.
Okay, that works.
Good. Just walk back, and I really feel like I can just press down. You can even do this with just cross legs. We're just getting a little extra hip, but I'm bringing the shoulder blades together. I'm feeling a little taller and more expansive, and I'm opening up the chest in the way that it has to open up. And I feel like I get a lot of room here because the hips are really grounded, like the legs are really a solid unit. And then I'd probably just come forward a bit too. And feel a little more, it's a little more intense if you lean in a bit.
It's way more intense.
And if you have the room, you can really drop into it.
And if you're Edward, your forehead is touching the floor.
You know, so.
If you're Veronica with the tight lower back and tight hips, you're like praying to reach the floor.
Exactly. You can always, I'll sometimes I used to do this, like pray, like let this be over with soon.
So, here's the next thing that we're doing. Edward will explain why we're doing this.
Well, a little squatting I think is helpful, again, for the hips. And this actually I do think helps the lower back. So I'm trying to lengthen my tailbone down but open up the chest. I like pushing the arms against the upper thighs and really getting some space. If you're watching this is really hard, you could just come up higher. You could negotiate with your heels. But I think, again, a minute here maybe can really help lengthen the spine a bit while releasing the hips.
I feel the stretch like all through my calves. I feel it
Great.
I feel it in my lower back. I also feel the stretch across the arch of my feet.
Yeah, it's a big deal stretch to be in a squat for a minute, maybe 2. So be easy and explore.
Okay, gang, hi. It's not over, and we didn't turn our backs on you, but we just wanted to demonstrate one stretch for drop backs. It's really helpful, but we wanted you to see it from the back.
Interlace your fingers, and you could just be here, but then maybe reach out. I'm reaching back, but I'm feeling my collarbones open and my heart open, and get a lot of extra length here.
All right, got that?
All right.
So hey, hi, we're back. Now we're doing
Camel.
camel pose. And why are we doing camel pose, Edward?
It's the same angle that the drop back is, this big angle, but it's much more stable and much less dramatic, but it's all there. So the beginning one, usually I would invite people to just put their hands behind them, and then just the hips are forward, the chest is lifting, the elbows are back. It's this big opening, you can lean a bit back, and then you can come on up. And then if that feels reasonable, then the next step would be actually toes tucked. So tuck your toes so your heels are a little higher, and then the hands go back to the heels. And you could just kind of find your way back there. And then she's lifting up in the heart space, behind her heart, and feeling this big stretch. The hips are forward, a breath or two or three or four, and that's a great beginning. It's a great prelude to the drama of the wheel. There you go.
Getting into a full wheel is like a lot of people haven't done it since they were a kid. Go in stages. And so this bridge pose, right? Well, Edward, talk about the setup first.
So the setup is you're lying down and the feet are pretty close to the hips. You want to almost be able to touch your heels as she can. And then she's going to lift her hips and take her arms underneath her with a soft, interlaced, fingered fist. Now she's rolling as much of the arm underneath herself as she can. She's lifting up here in this thicker thoracic spine. So it's not just the arms underneath you, it's the lifting of them. It's trying to get as much arm underneath you. And this is very sweet. You could stay here for a bunch of breaths. You can also do a very chill version of this if you had a block and put it right under your sacrum. So that would be a lower down, but you could stay there for quite a while. So this, again, maybe 5 breaths, maybe 10, great beginning to the next step, which would be a full wheel.
Okay, so Edward took me through the stretches. He took me through like the baby wheel, which is
the half wheel, the bridge.
Yep, the half wheel, the bridge. So now we're going to go for the full Monty, and this is a big prelude to the drop back. And I think one of the most important things for this, Edward, is actually the measuring off. At least it is for me, making sure that my
Yes.
fingertips and my heels line up and they
Yes,
touch.
you want
so watch
the
this.
knees over the ankles, and so again, this is pretty close. Like the feet are not too far away from her hips, and then she's going to place her hands by her ears.
And how wide apart are my feet, Edward?
I like the feet hip width. Some people will go differently than that, so judge for yourself. But they're really in line. Everything is in a nice line here, and her hands are in the same kind of plane here. They're pretty close to her ears. The fingers are pointing down, and then you could do this in stages. So maybe she would just try first to just lift up to the top of her head and just place that on the ground, and then all the way up. And then she's trying to straighten the arms, lift the heart. This is more dramatic. This is a bigger athletic thing. So maybe just a couple breaths in the beginning, and then when it's time to come down, you bring the chin to the chest and exhale your way down. So it's a huge opening, and in a yoga class, it's always towards the end because you have to warm everything up. It involves strength, it involves heart opening, it involves shoulder flexibility, and so it's a big deal.
And courage.
And courage.
Don't forget, courage is an ingredient in every great thing you do.
Yeah, and there's a lot that comes up with this sort of exposed heart feeling.
And you're upside down.
You're upside down. I mean, there's a lot. But that was excellent, and we might be ready to take it one more step.
Yep. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, what's up? So, VeronicaWebb, Web on the Fly, the amazing Edward Vilga, my friend, my yoga teacher, very inspiring, and we're talking about fear and compassion and how to get through your fears in a compassionate way. And yoga has a lot to say about that, and so does Edward.
Well, we'll see. Yoga does, because some of the poses, as you know, there are physical limitations, but a lot of times fear comes up. There's psychological limitations, and we're doing the whole drop back, where even people who can do the pose, the wheel, falling backwards like that is very scary.
Anytime you go upside down, anytime you're moving backwards, anytime it's balance, and the balance really comes from your hands rather than your feet, I get really scared. And what I don't want as I get older is to give into more and more limitations. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to push through this fear, Edward, of dropping straight back into a back bend. Maybe I watch Cheer on Netflix too many times. Anyway, but I'm trying to get through it without bullying myself through it.
Well, that's the thing. I wouldn't even call it or define it as pushing through a fear, because you don't want to push through anything, especially in yoga. So I think it's, first of all, I think it's making friends with your fear, because the fear is sensible. The people who did all those crazy things did not survive in the gene pool. So there's something about, that's, maybe I should think twice about doing that. So the first step, I think, really is acknowledging your fear and not trying to force it, and then moving through it gently. And as you said earlier when we were doing it, to do it with support. Mm-hmm. Because the first time anyone drops back, other than when you're 7, as an adult, should be with a yoga teacher, with someone who really knows what they're doing. So I think another part of that is really moving through the fear with the right amount of support.
And let me just tell you, Edward has mastered the drop back to the point where every year on his birthday, Edward has a special celebration.
I stand, I fall backwards into the wheel, and then I spring back up, and I do that once for every year of my life. So for me, what's interesting is that you do only one more each year, so it's this sort of celebration about moving through fear, and also that you're 1 degree more strong each year. You're 1 degree stronger, you're a little bit more flexible, you're a little bit more fearless. And so that's why I love that particular ritual.
And at the end of it, you're a little bit more powerful. And it really, I love what you're doing, Edward, and the way you do it, and working with you, because it's so age positive, and it's so right in line with Web on the Fly. Own your age, own your beauty, own your power. And Edward's just one of those people who helps me get there every day.
Well, every day you are getting more flexible with this, and more beautiful and more fearless.
I mean, every woman needs a friend like Edward. Everybody needs a friend like Edward, man, woman, and beast. Thank you, Edward.
My pleasure.
Oh wait, one more thing we forgot to say. Pretty soon, Edward has a great series coming up where you can get what I get in person.
Yes, I'm doing a series for everyday health. It's about financial resilience through mindfulness. And so it's about moving through all of your fears and challenges that way.
And that's everydayhealth.com.
Everydayhealth.com.
All right, coming up soon. So thanks for joining us on Web on the Fly. It's been a Wellness Wednesday or a Self-Care Sunday, or any day you want to treat yourself better. It's one of those days. See you next time.